Hi, I'm Hannah Avery. I'm really tired, and today we're going to talk about Hroswitha, who is the first female playwright, we think. I want you to know that the first thing is there's a lot of ways to say her name. There's like Hroswitha, Hroswitha, Hroswit, horseshit, horsnit. There's a lot of different ways. It's Latin. We all spoke Latin back then.
Yeah, we did.
In Germany. But she lived in Germany. I just said that. So she was a nun of nobility, and she became a canoness. And I looked up the definition of a canoness, and I can't really tell you what it is, but it's not like a regular nun, it's like a cool nun.
Oh.
And so, like...
what we all strive to be.
So, like, she was, like, religious, but, like, she also, like, didn't live under a vow. And they don't really know when she became a nun. Because they think, based off of her writings, I'm going to get into that in a minute, but
Okay.
she wrote, like, a lot. And, like, they think based off of her writings, she had some life experience before she became a nun. So we don't really know when, but we think she was kind of older. And that's also part of why she was a canoness. Because, again, like, if you're going to be, like, a regular nun or a cool nun, you want to be a cool nun.
Yeah.
I would be a cool nun.
I would be a cool
You'd
nun.
be a cool nun. Everybody be a cool nun. She was born into the Ottonian Renaissance, but that's not like the Shakespeare Renaissance. That's like before the Renaissance was the Renaissance. It was like a different kind of Renaissance.
Okay.
Because like the definition of a Renaissance is like a birth of art and music and poetry and smarts. I'm so tired. I slept on an air mattress last night. It's fine. So she was educated, unlike myself. She was really smart. She studied under all the other nuns, and she studied under a German king's daughter, Abbess Gerberga. Perkins. Horse shit and Gerberga was hot stuff back then. She was like she was like the most educated. She was like the prettiest. She was like, I don't think she was a nun, but she was, because she was a princess. But I think that like all the nuns wanted to be Gerberga. They would look at her and be like, wow, there's Gerberga again. Wish I could be her. Anyway, but Hroswitha, yes, she was smarter than Gerberga. By the end of her life, whenever she died, we don't know when, but she was really smart. And she was liberally educated, and she knew like math and music and astronomy and more math and grammar and rhetoric and logic, and like so her education was comparable to the men of her time, even though they were all like, women are slower, women are stupider. She wasn't. Not my CrossFit.
Hashtag no my.
Hashtag not my CrossFit. They often studied Terence, who was a playwright, and he wrote comedies, but like his plays were like, you know, he was a man. He was a manly man. He was a man.
Yeah.
And so the men were the forefront of his plays, and usually the women were kind of like bad, which, I mean, not surprising, but like Hroswitha was like, no, no, no. This is a funny man. This is a funny, manly man. I like Terrence. But she was like, but also, he's corrupted. And if me and all my other nun friends read this corrupted plays, we're gonna all be corrupted, and no one will be Christian ever again.
Of course.
That's what she said, word for word.
Okay.
In this book I read. Good. Promise. That's not a lie. Anyway. Where was I? We were talking about Terrence.
No one would ever be a Christian again.
No more Christians ever. So she was like, this is really funny. This is like some funny shit. I'm gonna write more funny shit, but for my Christians. So she wrote more funny shit for her Christians. And she wrote a bunch of plays, but like the reason why we, in addition to being the first female playwright, we also credit her with being one of the first feminist playwrights, because whether she intended to or not, she accidentally set this, well, not necessarily accidentally, we don't know if she intended for it or not, but she set the stage for female characters to make decisions, for them to take part in life, and life didn't just happen to them. And there was always like evil in her plays. Sometimes men, usually men. From what I understand, it was mostly men. Men were evil, but not all men. Just like the evil men, right. Especially the non-Christian men. They were like the evilest. And so, but like in all of her plays, the female heroines, yes, they would prevail. Their chastity would always prevail. So, long story short, Hroswitha. Yes, I wrote horse shit on my notes. I wrote, even though she was super smart and she's a canoness and all, she's still a woman. Oh, I wrote she's still a woman, plural. So no one really cares about poor horse shit.
We care about poor horse.
I care about poor horse. Some other guy did too. His name was Conrad Keltis.
Okay.
Am I pronouncing that correctly? Probably not. And he, basically, like I said, in her writing, she'd be like, I'm a woman, but still pay attention to me because I'm so smart, and this is God's gift to me. My gift was a strong voice. And she was like, this is my gift, and you should pay attention because it's Christian to do so. And so none of the men paid attention to her because she was a woman. Yeah. What does she know about God? She's just a canoness. She's not even a real nun. She's just a cool nun. And so her writing was found in a monastery. Conrad Keltis finds her writings, and he's a poet, and he's like, these are really good. They should be published. And so he published them. No, not like he did. He published them. And people, it wasn't like people were like, oh, I love horse shit. They were like, okay, it's another poem book, and it lived on enough for us to be like, wow, that gal was really important to our history of theater. And yeah, she was. And now we get to enjoy it. And
thanks to
Clyde Cladicus. Hello, I'm Morgan Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the female wits, the badass female playwrights who fought the patriarchy for equality in the theater world. So our story begins in 1600s London, and we are following aspiring female playwrights Mary Picks, Catherine Trotter, and Della Revere Millie. So our girl Catherine Trotter grows up in poverty due to the fact that her dad died way too soon. However, she has a true gift for words, and so at the age of 14, she's like,
yo, I'm like illiterate and stuff like that, but what if I just taught myself how to write? And so she does! And she teaches herself how to write, and she writes her first book called Olinda's Adventures, and then she publishes it for the whole world to see. And then, at the age of 16, she is inspired by Aphra Behn, a prolific female writer of the time, and writes her first play, Agnes de Castro. After she produces this play, she moves on to write even more and publishes philosophical works. Now, no one really knows much about Mary Picks, but we do know the fact that she was actually married at a really young age, at the age of 18. But she actually didn't start writing until she was like 30. So we do know that she was married to this guy, and she was like bored at home being a housewife. And so one day she was busy doing housewife chores and was like, you know, I'm getting really bored of this like housewife thing. So what if I just start writing down the things that like I'm thinking already? And so in just 1 year, she writes and produces 2 whole plays. Can't say this. Ibrahim, the 13th Emperor of the Turks, and the Spanish Wives. How about that for a stay-at-home wife, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, now De La Riviere Manley's story is just like really tragic, like really sad. And like Trotter, she was born into poverty and had to go to playwriting as like a job. And her father died at a really early age, and her cousin was like, yo, I'm sad because my wife died, move in with me. And so she does, thinking that she'll just help him to recover, but ends up almost unwillingly marrying him and having a child with him. Her cousin.
Oh dear.
Her cousin! Her cousin!
Yikes.
However, a few years later, she finds out that her cousin's wife is still alive. And her cousin is like, yeet! And you know what's so stupid is that, like, she ends up getting all the flack from people about this rather than her cousin. And I don't like it.
Men never get the flack.
I know, right?
Can we just talk about that?
It's not
fair.
It's not fair. Not at all.
Sorry, continue.
You're good. Okay, so still, she finds a way to make light of the situation and write her way out. And she's thinking, like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore the haters, and I'm going to write some damn plays. Now, she wasn't explicitly political, but girl, she spilled some hot tea in her plays. And she had written a series of letters and 2 plays before writing her most famous play, The Royal Mischief, in 1696. Now, who we believe is actor George Powell from the Drury Lane Company sees one of the performances of The Royal Mischief. Mm-hmm. And throughout the entire show, he's thinking, like, yo, why does everyone love this play so much? I mean, it's written by a woman, and that makes me feel insulted because my masculinity is incredibly fragile. So he goes home and is fuming and writes this play called The Female Wits in like 2 months. And in the script, he insults the most popular female playwrights of the time, Mary Picks, De La Riviere Manley, and Catherine Trotter. He writes specific caricature characters for this one. So Trotter's character, Callista, is a know-it-all airhead. Right. And then he writes Manley as the character, Marcilla, and she is described as a lover of flattery and is incredibly harsh and rude. And then Pix's character, Mrs. Wellfed, is described as a quiet, fat female author. George thought that he was dropping poetic art when he wrote the line, she is big enough to be the mother of muses.
Wow, he really said that.
He really said that, right? Mm. Ugh, so dumb. Anyway, he writes this whole play, like, insulting their plays in the way that they run rehearsals. and he ends up casting his own dream cast for the show with like actors from his own company, kind of like Phantom from Phantom of the Opera, you know.
Yeah.
And so he then slaps on the name Mr. W.M. as the author's name to make it anonymous, since he's afraid that he'll receive bad backlash from the show.
Wow. Hold on. So you're telling me that he couldn't even put his own name on this work?
Exactly, because he's a freaking coward.
Let me just tell you. Male bravery knows no bounds.
Brian Stubbles, male bravery knows no bounds, my
Yes,
man. Woo. Okay, so he takes his script to the next rehearsal that he has at the Drury Lane and is like, dudes, I just found this random ass script on the front steps written to us and it slaps. So the actors of his company read it, love it, and produce it promptly around October of 1696. However, as he expected, people responded to it not well, and it only runs for 6 days.
Nice.
6 days. Meanwhile, Manley and Trotter and Pix find out about this, and they're like incredibly humored. And they're like, the female wits. Huh. That sounds like a badass girl group. And so they take the name for themselves, and they use it as a way to represent how the history of theater was changing due to their feminist efforts. The play closes, and we hear absolutely nothing from Mr. W.M. for like 5 years. But then, it's 1704, and George Powell is feeling insecure. So he makes a version of the script with a preface attached, blaming the female playwrights and the taste of the town for it not running as long as it should have. And as a last hurrah, he roasts De La Riviere Manley even more in the preface, and then anonymously publishes the whole dang script for the whole world to see. Meanwhile, Hicks, Catherine, and Trotter are still out there producing some fireplace and kicking butt as the badass female wits.
That's amazing.
And that's the story. That's the story of the badass female wits, y'all.
And we love them.
And we love them! We really do. We love them. They're wonderful, wonderful ladies. Inspiring. Treasured by all.
Wretched blush for shame and proclaim your miserable defeat, because without the help of weapons, you cannot overcome a tender little virgin as your foe. He's all like, whatever the shame that may be mine, I will bear it more easily now, because I know for certain you will die. And then she says, this is the greatest joy I can get. But for you, this